We could all start finding our seats for the Finance Committee meeting. Good afternoon. The Committee on Finance is called to order. Are there any public speakers?
Yes, sir. We have 3 public speakers scheduled today. Dahlia Goldenberg.
Good afternoon. My name is Dahlia Goldenberg. I am here representing the Building Alcohol Ad-Free Transit campaign. As you have hopefully noticed, since this spring, our coalition has been showing up here, bringing a steady stream of speakers to give public comments at monthly board meetings. These speakers have represented youth organizations, community organizations, churches, alcohol recovery groups, and public health experts. And I'm here today to recap some of the main points about why the members of this coalition would like to see alcohol ads eliminated from the New York City transit system. So, first of all, there's a strong precedent for this. The MTA Board already has a ban on tobacco ads and political ads as a part of your advertising policy. Also, this has been done for alcohol in many cities across the country, about 32. They either removed alcohol advertising or they never allowed it in the first place. New York City is usually a leader in public health, and this is one place where we really need to catch up. Underage drinking is a significant problem. It's a problem leading to issues like teenage pregnancy, problems in school, and over 7,000 visits to the emergency room each year. And the earlier that young people start to drink, the greater chance they will have of becoming dependent on alcohol later in life. Now, what does this have to do with alcohol advertising? Public health studies have proven that the more alcohol ads a young person sees, the greater chance that they'll start drinking more or start drinking at a younger age. So these ads, though we may think that people just ignore them or don't notice them, get into our minds from a very young age. Furthermore, this is an equity issue. The ads are disproportionately targeting communities of color. There was a study done a few months ago by Dr. Sean Lucan at Montefiore where they did a study of ads in transit stations throughout the city, and it confirmed that there were more alcohol ads in stations with higher rates of poverty, more Hispanic blacks, and more adults who hadn't graduated high school, and more children. So these neighborhoods, already facing other forms of disparity, are receiving even more alcohol ads in their neighborhoods, something our community members have been noticing anecdotally all their lives. In terms of the finances, in July at the board meeting, the MTA chief financial officer reported that the income from these ads is $2.6 million system-wide. Really a small amount compared to the other income generation that the system has. We're pleased that a few board members have raised the issue, have discussed it in the board meetings informally recently, and we'd urge you to add this to the agenda. We'd like to see this moving forward. It should be a simple issue, and we're going to keep coming back until we see that there's more progress on it. So this Wednesday at the board meeting, we hope that there will be additional discussion. We know that last month, board member Charles Mordler requested, expressed interest
Could you conclude your remarks, please?
Yes, and we know that he expressed interest in discussing it at greater length, and Chairman Loda agreed that this was a good idea. So we will see you here on Wednesday with more of our friends, and we look forward to continuing the discussion as soon as you can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Mark Scully. Okay, finally, Jason Pinero.
Good afternoon, people. I think that we shouldn't talk about banning alcohol ads in our subway system, because they should consider the economic effect that it will have. Right now, our subway system is in decline. And I think that people like the last speaker doesn't quite acknowledge that. But I think that you guys do acknowledge that. And that's why I want to request to Andrew Soul to be very particular when he does his remarks. He could be a perfect person doing budget, but in terms of doing comments, he extended us that it's already 3:30 in the afternoon. And it is not fair that this time we're still here. But Freddie and all the rest, let's spend our money wisely and not like Mr. X will say back in the day, money thrown away. Well, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment section.
The minutes of the July meeting are in section 2 of the committee book. May I have a motion to approve? A second. Are there any comments or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Minutes are approved. Mr. Johnson, are there any changes to the work plan?
No changes to the work plan.
Then, would you please take us through Budget Watch and Finance Watch?
Sure, thanks. So this month's Budget Watch, we're going to focus on operating results through August and subsidy cash results through September. We're comparing results with the mid-year forecast that was presented in July. The forecast includes the projected revenue and cost impacts from the Amtrak Penn Station emergency mitigation. Those projections were included within the mid-year forecast. I'm going to start with August operating results. August passenger revenues were $6.4 million, or 1.2% unfavorable. New York City Transit and MTA Bus were unfavorable due to the continuing trend of lower than forecasted subway and bus ridership. At the commuter railroads, the LIRR was favorable due to higher ridership, and Metro North was on target. On a year-to-date basis, results were $17 million unfavorable on a combined MTA, reflecting weaker than expected subway and bus ridership. Year-to-date commuter rail revenue is on target to the mid-year forecast. Moving to toll revenues, those are favorable for the month due to higher traffic and higher average tolls. Year-to-date, however, they are $4 million unfavorable due to lower than forecasted average toll revenue, resulting from a higher than anticipated Easy Pass market share. Moving to expenses, preliminary operating expenses in August were $20 million favorable, and that increased the year-to-date favorable variance to $158 million, or 2%. Some of that was MTA-wide energy and health and welfare cost savings due to rates, but a lot of those favorable results were due to timing variances, and much of that will catch up later in the year as some of those bills hit our books. Within the expense totals were overtime expenses for the month that were $18 million, or 27.1% unfavorable. Year-to-date overtime results were $38.9 million, or 7.3% unfavorable. Now, those are large numbers, but the vast majority of those expenses are for the overages at New York City Transit in response to the subway action plan. Debt service costs were favorable for the month and remain favorable year-to-date. Subsidies through September were unfavorable by $5.4 million. Real estate transaction tax collections were $12 million unfavorable. The remaining subsidies were slightly favorable by $6.6 million. Real estate transaction taxes, they were on target for the month, but weaker than expected urban tax revenue from New York City commercial real estate transaction activity has continued to fall short of forecasts. We had taken those forecasts down in mid-year, and they're actually performing a little weaker than those forecasts. So I'm going to summarize all of those results. So net results were favorable for the month and remain favorable year to date. However, a lot of the expense variance, which is driving much of that, is timing based. So a lot of that will reverse in time. The monthly unfavorable trends for passenger and toll revenues and for the urban tax continue to be a matter of concern for us, and as we're trending lower there, and we'll be looking at that for November. Any questions? Okay. So in the interest of time, as you know, we're running very late. We thought we would just reference that Finance Watch is in the book, and we were just going to not go through that right now.
Are there any questions, though, on it or comments? Hearing none, please
Pat
proceed.
McCoy will be here next month, so he can talk about it then. So then next we are going to MTA headquarter and all agency items. There's one action item, and that's the authorization of TBTA notes and bonds. The MTA Finance Department is seeking MTA Bridges and Tunnel Board authorization and approval of the necessary documentation to issue new money bond anticipation notes and bonds to finance up to $600 million of capital projects and approved bridges and tunnels capital programs, as well as the adoption of the reimbursement resolution, which is required by federal tax law to preserve the ability to finance certain capital projects on a tax-exempt basis. The MTA Finance Department will report to the board on the status of the proposed debt issuance schedule, the results of each note and bond issue, and planned note and bond issues.
Is there a motion? Second? Any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, abstaining, the item carries.
Okay, we have two report and information items. The first is the contract change order report for the second quarter 2017, which is found on page 58. We've also included the capital contract change order, which is also reported to the CPOC committee. Those are for information only. Also for information, in September and October every year we include on the agenda the 2018, basically the July financial plan. We're not here to discuss it, but it allows members of the public to address it should they so choose, and that's why we include it on the agenda.
Thank you. David Ross will make a presentation on procurements.
Yes, thank you. For headquarters, there are 7 procurements for a grand total of $32 million. There's 1 non-competitive sole source procurement for miscellaneous service contract for a total of $3.4 million. There are also 6 competitive procurements for a total of $29 million. 1 is for an award of a purchase and public work contracts, 3 are for personal services contracts, and 2 are modifications to existing agreements for extensions and additional funding. I'll talk you through each one of the contracts that we have on the agenda now. The first one is a contract we're proposing with Bentley Systems. This is a non-competitive award. It's to provide continuous software licenses to support computer-aided design, software, and building information modeling. The Bentley systems have been a standard. They're really one of 2 leaders in the marketplace, and both B&T and New York City Transit are heavily invested in the particular Bentley software products. There are over 32 years of digital design drawings and other engineering documents that were procured through Bentley applications and resource files. So it would really be very difficult to go over to another system at this point. It would require extensive retraining. So it's one of those cases where it's really impractical to go with somebody else. Negotiations for this contract led to a 32% discount for Bentley's standard support price vis-a-vis 20 to 25% discounts on the prior contract. The next one here is with Legend and White Animal Health Corporation for supply and delivery of dog food. It's for $250,000. There were a couple of bids on this contract. We might have hoped for more competition, but with a lot of dogs, we require a variety of different types of specialized dog food, and there were only a couple that could provide what we require. So that's why that one.
Commissioner Metzger and I were both glad to see there were gluten-free options for the dog.
That's great.
And we're working on the same
Yeah.
for people, too.
It was a rough procurement. Anyway, the next contract is, all right, as bad as you can get. So the next contract is with Marsh USA for all agency master broker services for $8,606,470. This is a 5-year contract. We received 3 proposals. It was an RFP process. Marsh is the incumbent for procurement and maintenance of insurance, forensic accounting services, and they have specialized expertise in FEMA management and insurance-related claims and other services. The contract amount actually includes $2.25 million for forensic accounting services and other anticipated master broker services. The next one is also a 5-year contract with P&A Administrative Services to support administrative and record-keeping services for MTA's flexible spending accounts. This is a tax-favored program operated for the benefit of employees of the MTA and its subsidiaries and affiliates. It allows employees to pay for qualified health care and dependent care using pre-tax income through payroll deductions, and there are about 6,200 employees that participate in the program. And I should note that a portion of the program's costs, actually about half, are saved by MTA due to reductions in employer portion of FICA taxes that would otherwise be paid through wages. So almost half actually slightly more than half the cost of the program is saved elsewhere by the MTA. The next contract I should note that this is for $300,000 for all 7 vendors combined over a 3-year period, is for freelance writing and editorial services. The 7 vendors selected are 7 of 13 that had actually proposed on this, and there will be a rotation of the vendors for smaller projects and a mini-bid process to select which vendors would provide services on the larger projects. So it's $300,000 over 3 years for all of those vendors combined. The next contract is an extension of a contract that was a 5-year contract. We've already exercised a 3-year extension. There's a last 2-year extension of that contract with J.P. Morgan Chase, and it's an all-agency miscellaneous services contract for cash management, coin and currency processing, and customized lockbox services for 2 years. So the extension takes us from October 2017 through September of 2019. I should note that annual spending has been fairly constant. It's been between $1.8 and $2.1 million a year. The original contract amount, if you look at it, you notice was lower than the annual spending on the contract. But that is in large part because the BSC was not included in the original estimates, and there are some additional services that have been required on the contract as well. So spending has been relatively constant despite the unevenness of the original estimate relative to spending in each one of the years after. The last is a contract with Prevost Car USA. It's for the purchase of 31 over-the-road coach buses for $16,950,986. And this is to provide buses being purchased on behalf of New York State DOT for the Lower Hudson Transit Link Initiative. It's a rapid bus transit service that will replace the Tappan Zee Express bus service operating between Rockland and Westchester counties. And the commencement of this service will coincide with the opening of the Mario M. Cuomo Bridge. And I should note that pricing on this is very slightly lower than the pricing on the New York City Transit contract, though it's riding a New York City Transit contract. So that's it for the transit contracts. For the
On
MTA.
these headquarters procurements, is there a motion? Second? Any discussion, comments, questions? Ms. Vanterpool and then Mr. Wortendijk.
Having been a task force member from 2013 to 14 who recommended the new bus service in the Tappan Zee Bridge, I-287 corridor, I'm really glad to see this particular procurement move forward because there were quite a few hiccups with previous RFPs, so I'm glad a solution was worked out between NYSDOT and MTA. My question is, what is the schedule of payment for NYSDOT back to MTA? Is that in this existing, NYSDOT's existing capital program or the following year?
They are paying us back.
David, I'll just add, it is full payment from NISDOT to MTA. It's in the current program, and it's intended to be full payment, no cost to the MTA at all.
And will that payment be received in this fiscal year, this calendar year, or next year when the buses, in June, when the first delivery is made?
I have to verify that, Veronica.
Mr. Wortendijk. Got it. You're on.
Still on the same issue?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, the payment is supposed to be received before we actually execute the contract. The money is supposed to be deposited with New York City, with MTA.
Okay. Okay, Carl.
Yes, as far as the buses are concerned, right now, or a while ago, they were coming into the station. And now I hear a couple of people who were telling me that that's not happening anymore. And when the bridge opens, they don't know what's going on. Is there any reason why that the buses were going to Westchester? Nobody knows?
It's my understanding they're still coming into the station. We'll verify that, Commissioner.
Do you know if they did anything temporarily?
I don't know
with the
that.
construction where they had to go there?
No, but we'll get an answer for you.
All right, well, I'll ask some more questions too, so that on Wednesday, maybe we could look at it again.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
If there's nothing else on these headquarters procurements, moved and seconded, all in favor? Opposed, abstaining, the procurements carry. Mr. Ross, please continue with Metro North procurements.
Sure, for Metro North Railroad, there are two procurements for a grand total of $2.7 million. One is a non-competitive sole source procurement for a total of $1.5 million for track undercutting services. One is a competitive single source procurement with a total of $1.2 million for a change order to an existing agreement to replace the Haverstraw Ferry Dock. I note that the Metro North Railroad Committee voted to table the following competitive procurements: Mass Electric Construction, LLC, Halmar Transportation Systems, LLC, Signet Electronic Systems, Incorporated, and Fort Audio Video Systems, LLC.
Dr. Metzger, will the chair of the Metro North Committee be adding anything to that?
This is correct. We did, all those four contracts relate to our customer service initiative, and they're interrelated. We had a rather lengthy, as I recall, discussion about the design-build process that was used. I have about 7 issues which I'm going to ask for clarification over the next month to the Metro North Committee, and we hope to move ahead with them at that time. However, one of the issues I think belongs in this committee. The board was very happy to move to design-build. We did so in the belief that it would result in cheaper, more expedited projects. We've certainly seen that the projects are expedited when we use design build, and that there's certain kinds of projects that are very effectively done that way. We ask that you provide us with information about how we're doing with design build. Are we saving money? Because we don't have the impression that we're saving money. Our impression, and it may be false, is that we're getting fewer bidders on our design build. We recognize that the discussion of risk is a lengthy one, and we think it works out positively, but I think it's time to look at the process and let us know whether using this method is helpful or not. Might be useful for all of the different methods we use to get a status on what you think works. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Motion to approve. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? The procurements carry. Long Island Railroad procurement?
For Long Island Railroad, we have one competitive procurement requesting to use the RFP process for a design-build method to allow the agency to evaluate technical factors in addition to price, vendor, and to be determined. Coincidental.
Could I point out something? Sorry for this. We also discussed that in the Long Island Railroad Committee. And this is the way it's traditionally been done, because that type of contract really only works with design build. So we weren't including your design build for Long Island Railroad, right, Mitch?
Got it. Okay.
Is there a second? Is all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? The procurement carries. New York City Transit procurement.
So for New York City Transit and MTA bus operations, we have one competitive procurement requesting the use of an RFP process to evaluate technical factors in addition to price for a total of $106 million. I note that the competitive procurement for Vicom computer services, which is included in the printed materials, will not be voted on today. Did you have something?
It's not for a vote today.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is just for information.
Yeah.
Bridges and tunnels.
So
Procurement.
for bridges and tunnels, we have one competitive procurement for a total of $16 million for the modification of an existing agreement for an extension and additional funding.
Motion? Second? Is there any discussion, comment on this procurement? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? The procurement carries. Nothing for FinTech, I presume?
No items. That concludes the procurements. Thank you.
Yeah, so within the book, we have this month's MTA consolidated financial and operational reports for both June and July against the mid-year forecast. We've also included the 12-month allocation of the 2017 mid-year forecast. And next is Jeff with real estate.
Thanks, Doug. We have 5 staff summaries for you this month, including one that was emailed to you on Friday and I believe posted on the website on Friday relating to Penn Station. I hope they're self-explanatory, and of course I'll be glad to take questions about any of them, but I would like to highlight the advertising item in the book this month. This represents the culmination of nearly 2 years of collective effort by MTA Real Estate, MTA Procurement, MTA Strategic Initiatives, with support from MTA IT and Finance and each of the agencies. We're very proud of this procurement in that it is not typical of our past advertising concessions. Indeed, the separate billboard item that's in your books this month, it, sort of exemplifies our traditional approach, which is, revenue maximizing. But what we realized in the course of preparing to issue this RFP is that with the wholesale transformation of the so-called outdoor advertising industry to migrate from paper and paste to digital, that we had an opportunity to piggyback on this procurement to very significantly enhance our customer communications without any direct capital outlay, and relying on the expertise and, most importantly, the self-interest and motivation of the concessionaire to minimize cost and maximize revenue. We could, indeed transform our station and rolling stock environment. So I'm very pleased to point out to you that we are talking about, over the course of this concession, an expected more than 50,000 digital screens that will entirely displace paper advertising in our stations. And this includes more than 4 screens as a retrofit on all of our Metro North and Long Island Railroad and subway trains, other than cars that are sort of slated for retirement. I'll note that we are not calling on the concessionaire to make a capital investment in screens in our buses. That's for the reason that buses has its own separate initiative that's well on track to be adding 2 to 3 digital screens to about 75% of the bus stock over the course of the next year. So I'd like to acknowledge in particular the work of, we had a 9-person selection committee that was at this for a very long time, representing the disciplines I identified, as well as senior management at each of the agencies. We had 60 or 70 people in a technical working group supporting this effort to make sure that we actually knew how to support the installation of not just the screens, but the associated infrastructure. And a lot of people worked very hard on this, particularly from headquarters, Jerry Page, Frederica Cuenca, and Nora Ostrovsky. So if there are any questions about this or any of the others, I'd be glad to answer them.
If somebody were to vandalize or destroy or deface one of these digital screens, is it the concessionaire, the organization that is to repair it?
Yes.
Mr. Pally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been through some of this before, and I think this is a fantastic endeavor, and I congratulate everybody who was involved in it. Speaking only at the Long Island Railroad customers, we all know full well the significant necessity of improving communication efforts at our stations. I'll leave Penn by itself for the moment. Many of the outlying stations, the system that we have had for many years has very little flexibility, doesn't provide up-to-date information, and based upon our conversations, I know that is something that was very important in this endeavor. While it is an advertising endeavor, it is also, at least from the Long Island Railroad customer, a communication endeavor. And sometimes that communication may be advertising, and sometimes that communication may be the status of its train or the next train or the train after that, or whatever else involved in that. So that's why I am totally supportive of this endeavor. I think it will be fantastic. As I've said to you before, I'm hopeful that the Long Island Railroad will be able to look at where these are going to be installed at the stations, because I've had many concerns over over the location of it and how the customer gets their information as soon as possible without having to go up on the platform. I know that's been something you've been working on with regard to the subways, so before you go downstairs, you'll see the information that is important on the Long Island Railroad, and I'm sure my friends at Metro North would agree. The quicker you can get people the information as they come into the parking lot or before they go upstairs, or which is where they normally go, the better it will be. So I'm hopeful that as we install these, or as we make decisions as to how we install these very important technological advances, we take that into account at the various stations, because they will have an impact on customer service and customer relations, which is as important as what they get. It's when they get it. And so I'm hopeful that we can do that together. As I said, I think this is a fantastic endeavor, and I congratulate all the people on staff who have been involved in this for many, many years. We've been talking about it, and I'm glad to finally see it's come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Jeff, is it still 20-some-odd% that MTA will control?
Yes, I apologize. I had meant to be more specific about that. So of the roughly 52,000 screens we're talking about 5,600 of them will be entirely dedicated to customer communication, including notably new digital customer information centers at the entrances to subway stations. But then as a general matter, these are independently addressable screens that up to 20% of the time and or space will be available to us. Much in the way that you see on the urban panels today, you'll see our message along the base of the stair-facing screen. And we will be able to, in effect, play with that time and space over time to, discover the best ways to take advantage of that capability.
If there's no one else, before calling for a motion, second, and a vote, as I have done previously, I'd like to recuse myself from this vote. Is there a motion to approve? Second, All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? And recusing? Okay.
Thanks.
If there is nothing else, may I have...
Well, I mentioned.
I'm sorry, are there others?
There are information items.
Excuse me.
Isn't the additional item?
Well, yeah, and I'm sorry if there's any procedural confusion. I was asking for approval of the 5 items, including.
Oh, I have
the
a question
pen
about
item,
the
if you
Penn
want to talk
Station
about-
item.
Sure.
Yeah. I have no objection to the concept, and obviously here you're just asking for approval to commence the EDPL process. But I am, the property that we're seeking to acquire here is not really set forth in very specific terms. So could you, I don't want to hold up the approval, but could you circulate to all of us exactly what the actual parameters are of the One Penn Plaza property interest that
Sure.
you're seeking?
I mean, I will say that's a work in progress. It's something we're trying to work through, and that would need to be, brought to greater specificity ahead of any public hearing. But as a general matter, we're talking about space in the bed of 33rd Street that has historically been master leased to now Vornado, previously the developer, the original developer of One Penn, which we would effectively be recapturing to widen the corridor north. And then we have an existing space lease, as is mentioned in the staff summary, that will be coming to an end in 2019, as this committee has heard before. And so we need to, provide for a sort of cost-effective, if you will, reconfiguration and possibly expansion of that space, which would generally be along the rear wall of the northernmost boundary, to be as far away as possible from the corridor, so as to do as little, harm as possible to the value of the retail.
Jeff, do you have an order of magnitude of roughly how many square feet are we talking about here?
Let me not do that off the top of my head. If I will get that around to you.
Okay.
Well, just for the interest of clarity.
Yeah, sure.
What this vote is about is delegating to you the authority to specifically delegating to you the authority to negotiate, but this comes back to the
Exactly right.
committee and the board.
That's exactly
Now,
right.
it used to be on real estate items, as I recall it, because I was the one who offered the motion a few years ago, that we delegated the chairman to do that. And the chairman then, in turn, delegated it. What changed?
No, I don't think there's any intended variation there. Well, we're just asking for permission for staff to explore options with the interested property owners and to schedule a public hearing. We would be back, just as you say, we would be back to the board with any proposed condemnation findings, or alternatively any proposed transaction that was consensual.
In light of that, I just said the chairman's question, I'm not quite, why do you need our authorization even to take this step, since you're, I mean, as I understand it, you're seeking authority to begin the EDPL process, really.
Yeah, no, I think you had it right in the first place. That's the reason that we have, routinely brought these sorts of, preliminary requests to the board whenever we've entertained the possibility of condemnation.
And I totally understand that,
Yeah.
both as a strategy as well
Yeah.
as a requirement, assuming we ultimately had to acquire through eminent domain. But it would be, the way the resolution is worded, it's a sort of an infinite amount of space in One Penn Plaza that we could be talking about. And So it would just be useful, I certainly don't
Sure.
want to hold this up, but it would be useful to get a sense of the parameters here, so
Glad to
One
do
Penn
that.
Plaza is a big place.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about the entirety of it by
I
any means.
I understand, that's why I...
Okay.
And in connection, if I may, in connection with Commissioner Ferrer's question, there's a delegation from the chairman to the managing director, and in turn to, among others, Jeff Rosen, Jano Lieber, and Bob Ferran to negotiate real estate transactions.
Good. That clarification is very much appreciated because at least that part of it hasn't changed. Okay. Dr. Metzger.
You'll note in the information items that Jeff always identifies which policy he's acting under. Metro North Committee members, some offline more or less, have asked questions about those, and I spoke with Jeff today. We do an annual review of those policies that provide him with authority and us with authority. That review's done in March. I'm not sure we do it here. We might do it in governance. I can't remember which committee it goes to. Is it this one? Could you get us those policies earlier? Because they take a little bit of thought, and since people are talking about them now, I think the sooner the better. And in keeping with that conversation, I've been assured that he follows these policies assiduously, which has been my observation.
Do.
Whatever assiduously means.
Assiduously or otherwise. Okay, if there's nothing else, are we ready for a vote on these items? A motion to approve? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The items are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.